This teacher raped her 14-year-old student and got away with it. Now this is Debora Lafave. She becomes a teacher, and during her first year of teaching, she gets married to this guy, Owen. But only less than a year later, Owen thinks Debora's having an affair with another teacher at work. And she was having an affair, but not with a teacher. So Debora teaches in middle school, and she starts dressing really inappropriately. And so she would get a lot of attention from her students. And especially from this guy, and I don't know his real name, so let's just call him Jim. Now Jim's really athletic and is a really popular guy, and he's also 14 years old. And Jim, he thinks Mrs. Lafave is really hot, so he flirts. And because Debora's a bit of a weirdo, she likes it. And not long later, she chaperones a school trip with Jim and some other students. And this trip made them really close. And for the rest of the year, Debora's always trying to get Jim alone with her. And bear in mind, he's not even in her classroom. But she would offer him rides home and buy him gifts. And Jim, he keeps bragging about this to his school friends and telling them that he's gonna bang Mrs. Lafave. So then Debora Lafave, she gives Jim detention. She confesses all her feelings for him and then takes her top off and starts kissing him. Jim, he's super gassed up, so he calls his cousin and he's like, dude, I just banged my teacher. And his cousin's like, yeah, right, prove it. So 24-year-old Debora, 14-year-old Jim and 15-year-old cousin hang out at her house. And Debora, she's dressing like a teenager and talking in a baby voice. She takes Jim to her and her husband's bedroom and performs an act on him. And when she's driving them home, she asks Jim's 15-year-old cousin to take the wheel so she can go in the backseat and perform another act on Jim. A few days later, she calls Jim and tells him to meet her in her classroom so they could go all the way. And this was Jim's first time ever. And they did this 3 times, all of which were in her car. One of the times being in her back seat while Jim's cousin was driving again. And by the way, he's 15 years old and he has no driver's license. And Jim and Debora, they just keep doing it in her car while Jim's cousin waited outside the car. Until a friend of cousin's mum saw them hanging out with an inappropriately dressed woman. So she confronts them, and of course, they lied. But that same night, cousin's mum hears him speaking on the phone, talking about his cousin getting smashed by his school teacher. And cousin's mum, she's like, what the f? And she calls Jim's mum. And that's when, boom, Jim's mum calls the cops. And the police, they get Jim to call Debora so they could record her incriminating herself. Jim then asks her to meet up again and she says yes. That's when, boom, the cops arrest her and she's facing 15 years in jail. All this drama hit the news and Debora, she was a really hot topic. Because everyone thought she was so hot. There were even bikini pictures of her in the papers. People seemed to glamorize her as a hot teacher that banged her students. But she claimed to be the victim. She made interviews talking about how she had a rough past because she was raped at 12 years old. Her sister died. She had problems with alcohol. Yada yada yada. Poor girl. So I guess the public just started to pity the poor blonde. She even claimed that the police officers forced her to take all her clothes off so that they could take pictures. And apparently they did this to see if Jim's description of her body matched the pictures. So they used this argument in court and her lawyer even said she's too pretty to go to prison. And her husband Owen, he actually stuck by her and even wrote a book about her, painting her out to be the victim. But they divorced and now Debora's remarried and has a child. I guess being a pretty blonde gets you away with crime.